thanks for joining us. I'm really excited to our conversation today. My name is Michael Goldberg. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, home of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Any Cavs fans here? Woo! Go Cavs. Any Warriors fans here? Oops. So Cleveland, not necessarily known for entrepreneurship, but we've actually been doing a lot over the last couple of years to support the growth of entrepreneurship. And again, thanks to the U.S. Embassy in Paris, I've spent the last week in a few days in Bordeaux and in Strasbourg and in here, and having some really interesting conversations with folks in the ecosystem about supporting the growth of entrepreneurship. And one of the big topics that we talk about is pipeline of entrepreneurs and where those entrepreneurs come from. And it's great to be joined by such amazing women to talk about the topic today, women in science and entrepreneurship. We'll talk about what that means to them. But before we do that, if we can have each panelist just sort of give a quick couple sentence intro of your background, and then we'll get into the conversation.
Sure. I'm Dara Dotz, co-founder of Field Ready. I'm an industrial designer, and I focus on the extremes. So I work from the edges, from space to disaster.
I'm Joy Wolfram. I'm an assistant professor at the Mayo Clinic in the United States, and we develop nanomedicine to treat patients that are dying from cancer and other diseases.
My name is Cecile Muller, and I'm a pediatric surgeon here in Paris. I'm specialized in mini-invasive surgery, robotics, and also 3D reconstruction to realize image-guided surgery for children.
So my name is Gwenaelle Huet. I'm the CEO of renewables activities for Engie, which is a global company from utilities, from energy. And previously I worked for I would say, ministers in France, and also for scientific research. So I have different backgrounds, but now I am in energy, definitely.
Great. Good. Well, let's pass. I'll do you again a round robin. Why don't you grab it, Dara? We'll start with you. You know, this topic, and again, thank you so much for joining us. Women in science and entrepreneurship. You know, when I got together with the panelists beforehand, I was struck by the reaction when Hello Tomorrow reached out to you to be on this panel. What was your reaction? What were your thoughts about joining the panel, and what did it mean to sort of be in front of folks, kind of addressing some of the topics associated with it?
I think my initial thought was damn straight. It's about time we have more kick-ass women on stage, because it's important that we have role models for young women. We were actually talking in the back about how mentorship and female mentors, and I actually can't find a female mentor in tech in Silicon Valley, so if any of you guys know any of them, please send them my way. But that's what made me so excited, is because this is an opportunity for us to really stand up and show younger girls what can be done, especially in these fields.
Yeah, I thought it was a good thing, because it's definitely a problem. We see major gender and racial disparity in science and technology. We don't have enough women, we don't have enough racial minorities. So any way that we can bring this issue up to the public, I think is a good thing.
I totally agree with you, girls, but I was a bit ambiguous with that. My first reaction was, well, that's great. That's a good thing. And at the same time, I thought, well, I'm just here with you today because I'm a woman, and this thing was quite a bit disturbing. So we're gonna speak about that later, I think.
Thank you. For my part, I think it's a bit different. I would like to use this panel to do a testimony, because I'm working for a company for which our CEO is a woman, and it's the only one to be a woman from big companies in France, CAC 40. And so she developed all internal political, I would say, initiatives to make sure that women has a role to play in this group. And this changed quite a lot, with lots of initiatives with regard to networking between women, to making women having different careers within a group, and to promoting women, not only because they are women, but just enabling them to be in a different position within the group. So I think that there are some taboo, and now we are in a company, in our company, in Engie, with all those initiatives, and I want to testify about that.
Great. Joy, when you were on the main stage, they've kept Joy very busy at this conference. you did a talk on the main stage today, and you had a bullet in your last slide about your goal of increasing gender diversity in science. Talk a bit about that, and also as somebody up and coming in the field, have you faced issues related to gender that have been challenges for you?
So I think in science we can't afford not to include women, because if we get this diversity in how we think and leadership styles, we need that, and there needs to be a balance. I've been very lucky because I was born in Finland, and Finland is one of the countries where there is really good balance, and I grew up with confidence that women can do things and make it happen. But having lived in several other countries, I do see these issues, and they appear at an early age, where girls think that they're not capable of doing the same things as men. And one of the things we need that you mentioned was role models. And a lot of the time scientists are isolated. And if we isolate ourselves, we won't be those role models.
And Cecile, maybe do you want to comment on your own career? I know you mentioned to me that you had some female mentors, but it's pediatric surgery is dominated by men. Curious your own experience.
Well, surgery is historically a men's job. This has changed in the past years, and pediatric surgery is kind of different. They used to be always, since the beginning of that discipline, more women than in other field of surgery. And the thing is, yes, my mentors at present are women, and I think they are glad I am glad to work with them, and they both are glad to work with me, because also I'm a woman. This can be debatable, but something really happened there. Yeah.
Right. Dara, you mentioned, you do amazing work around the world, and you mentioned the world, although Silicon Valley is sort of quote unquote your home, you're sort of on planes all over. You mentioned to me beforehand a story about coming back to Silicon Valley after one of your deployments that sort of gave you some insight into kind of what you were sort of facing there. I'd love for you to share that.
Yeah. So I did disaster response, and so we were on the ground within 36 hours of the earthquake in Nepal. And I actually had deployed with a group of veterans, predominantly male, of course. And I remember getting on the plane and mentally prepping myself, okay, I'm gonna have a lot of harassment, it's gonna be like scrappy, we're gonna get into it. And I was right, I had tons of harassment, and it was scrappy, and it was totally equal. The guys were teasing the guys just as much as the girls were teasing the girls, and the guys, it was totally the same. It was amazing, actually. And so when I came back, I was working at a number of companies in Silicon Valley, and I was actually more shocked coming back to Silicon Valley, not from like the despair that I was seeing in Nepal and people asking for food and hungry, and then coming back to Silicon Valley and seeing all the food wasted, things like that. But actually, I was so shocked at being so respected in the field with men to coming back to Silicon Valley that I actually quit all my jobs, because I realized I'd been living in so much blatant sexism, and I just hadn't known it because I hadn't been plucked from the experience. So I actually used to go on interviews saying how great it was, not knowing, because I just hadn't experienced anything different. And so I just thought that was a really fascinating kind of experience to go out with a bunch of vets where you think it's going to be the opposite, and it was like the best I've ever felt. Totally treated like an equal. It was great. Yeah.
Great. Gwenaelle, let me pose this one to you. And by the way, feel free to jump in. And I also should have prefaced by saying I'm going to be turning it over. There'll be time for audience questions. So we'll do about a half an hour of moderated discussion, and then we're excited to get your questions. So get ready, audience. We'll be calling on you. Gwenaelle, you referenced the work and being in a work environment where you have a female leader at the top. And that's relatively rare in the corporate world. What are the things, maybe if you can reference some of the things that you guys are doing internally as a company to promote sort of females in the workforce? Is it organized mentoring that's happening? And how are those programs working, and maybe where are the challenges?
I think that there are different elements. The first thing on which everybody thinks is quotas. And we do not think that quotas is the best thing to do. We think that quotas can be important, yes, to make some promotion and to make sure that there is a representation of women at certain level of the group and within the group. So this is something for which we really perform, but this is not only the only thing, because most of women in a very male environment, for example, in engineering companies like Engie, they don't always feel at the right place. Because when you are in a meeting with only men, for which you know the kind of relationship is quite tough, you don't always think that you are at the right place. So what is important is to give confidence to women, to make sure that they feel at the right place at the right moment, and they feel that they have the possibility to evolve within the group. And so to do that, we've built Women in Network. It's a network of women for which we build together like a therapy, just to make sure that together we help each other to communicate and to give confidence. But I would say that things do not stop there, because what we believe is that there is a problem with regard to schools, and we need to promote scientific I would say, métier, also in the schools area. So what we do within the group is to say that people and women within our group has to accompany women in schools. So secondary schools, we are helping women to go towards engineering and scientific careers. And we think that it is a way also to see in the field how the relationship is improving or not, and to give a chance to everybody. So yes, we are working internally, but also externally, especially in the schooling area.
Great. Joy, when we discussed the work that you're doing, the clinical research, you mentioned that you may have something kind of in the pipeline that could eventually be commercialized. I'm sort of curious, I mean, among many of your accomplishments, starting a company and spinning something out is something that you haven't done yet. I'm sort of curious your perspective on, as a researcher looking to commercialize technology, and then what kind of support do you think that potentially should be out there for clinicians like yourself commercializing technology?
So I think it's definitely something that I will do in the future, and I think we have to build research that is very strong, and when we're at that level, we can take it to become a business. I think there should be, funds for women. Since I'm not at that stage yet, I'm not aware of that, but maybe some of the other panelists can comment on funding for women for entrepreneurship.
Cecile, do you want to, I know you have some initial work that you're doing that's going to, technology that would be transferred. Any kind of initial experiences, any types of programs that you think would be particularly useful to help you in that process?
Some of them exist in France. Not really public initiatives for women, but more private, like L'Oréal Prize for Women's Science, Marie Curie Prize and things like that. I've been looking at them. Yeah, I think it's a great thing, but it's more. I have noticed that it's more private funds and philanthropic funds more than public policy here in France. I think it's going to change. I hope so. But I just wanted to add something about what you would say about education. Mm-hmm. Maybe it could be the right time to talk about that. I think this initiative, external initiative from Engie, is really the answer, because we know that there are less women in science and entrepreneurship, but let's talk about science because I'm not an entrepreneur yet, but maybe soon. We all know that, but why is that? Because a lot of studies, very serious ones published in Nature, Science, and researchers at the CNRS here in France, they have designed studies to test the children at the age of 6 or 7. Just an example, a very recent work published this year, they ask girls and boys to make a figure. And in one group, they labeled it like a drawing thing. And in the other group, they labeled it with geometry. The girls had a better code within the group labeled by drawing, and the boys with geometry. And when you make the inverse experience, it's changed. So this is the proof that it's a very common prejudice that we all, are aware of, or not very aware of. Parents, teachers, they think that boys are better at mathematics, physics, and so on. and it's a very common prejudice, but it's not nature. It's not Mother Nature, and I think not enough people are aware of that. So quotas are a good thing. I think it's like a transition. From my point of view, it's a transitional measure to change mentalities. It's not. It's not ideal, quotas, because it's discrimination. So, but the thing is, we have to work on is education, I think, to change mentalities about that, and to build confidence, not only at the adulthood, but since the very beginning of our learning mathematics, science, and things.
Dara, let me ask you a question. We were talking beforehand about Harvey Weinstein and Me Too and the dialogue that this case is getting. I mean, I mentioned to you that I had never asked my own wife if before this kind of recent dialogue, if she had ever faced that kind of harassment. I'm sort of curious your perspective on the dialogue and how that impacts what we're talking about today.
Yeah, I think it's definitely made it an extra hot topic right now. Obviously, I think we all could probably share our stories. And I was mentioning earlier, I said, of course, it's a conversation that needs to be had. And we were discussing that perhaps this is finally people are speaking up. And so it doesn't seem like such a shameful thing. People can start to come out of it. But it was just interesting because we were talking about discussions. I don't know if it's because you're a man or because your relationship, but I couldn't think of one woman I knew who hadn't been sexually assaulted when I'd had the conversation. And so it was actually incredibly shocking to me that this was shocking to people. So I think it's really interesting that we're having this dialogue now and on an international stage with a lot of different thought leaders and particularly females. And I'm really curious to hear what you guys think of this and how it's affecting you here.
hot potato. Yeah.
Thanks, Dara. In the medical world, in surgery, yes, it's really a man's world. You have to adapt, and when you're young, and I did it, I recognize it, you want to fit in. You want to fit in the group, and the group is led by men. So, with jokes, sexual jokes and things like that, you start to make the same jokes, the same sexist jokes yourself. And then you grow up, you turn 30, and you say, well, maybe that's not the best way to be myself, in fact. So, no, I never have been personally sexually harassed. No, it never happened to me, but I've experienced sexism, and the more I get older, the more I feel it. The famous glass ceiling. Hopefully, things have changed. So when I was younger, I couldn't really say that I suffered from sexism during my medical studies. I was just, part of that atmosphere, and I coped with it, and I developed defense strategies to survive, in fact, in this world. But it's quite difficult to get out of that kind of behaviors without turning, aggressive or hysterical and very feminist, you see, and not getting ridiculized or, So it's kind of difficult to find the right way to do things, but I think things are getting better. And speaking of the Weinstein scandal, for the first time, men, quite old men, within my environment, work environment, ask me the question, did it happen to you? Nobody never asked me that question before, so I'm quite an optimistic person, so I think things are changing, definitely.
And I think it's very important that women are heard now, whether it comes to, sexual harassment or in general in the workplace. And I think a lot of times we're too polite, and we have to change this. We have to remind ourselves to stand up and make ourselves heard. And I think also when we mentor other women to promote this type of behavior, that we shouldn't stand in the background. And I think this is very important.
Great. New question, or do you want to comment?
No. I never seen something like that happening for me, but I would say that the most difficult part for me would be to fight against the taboo, because most of your careers you don't fit exactly when you are in a scientific or engineering career. You don't fit exactly to what you are expected to do. And I remember when I did my studies when I was very young, and my scientific teacher, he told me I should never go to scientific career because I would not be able to do that. And I remember that my parents were very supportive, and they saw that I was very logical, so there was no reason I couldn't do mathematics, I couldn't do science. And so they supported me, but and then I went and I did my baccalaureate, and then I went to a school, École Normale Supérieure in physics. So, I mean, I did it. And I did it not only because of the threatening from my teacher. I did it because I had the support of my parents, and I had the confidence. And so I think that today, the problem that we have is that some women have not this confidence because the environment is so pressuring them because there are some ideas on what we expect them to do. And so I think that our battle would be this one. Everybody has the right to do anything they want. For my part, I work from scientific research, from political parties, and then now I am CEO of a company, of a business unit from a big company. So I would say that we can do everything in life. It's just a matter of having the confidence to do it. And I think that for women, sometimes it's not a problem of the environment, it's the problem of themselves because they think that they are not able to do that. And so I think that the support that we can provide to them by mentoring people, by accompanying them, and by also the family, I think it's really important.
Great. Well, let's. That was great. Let's. We have some volunteers with microphones.
My name is Isabel. I'm a social scientist. I don't really fit in here. I do my research on gender and entrepreneurship at INSEAD. I was struck by a comment from Cecile about your ambiguity about being here because you're a woman on this panel. And that, I think, tends to happen to most women on most panels. Except earlier today when I was at the biotech investor panel, which was all female. An all female, this is the first time in my entire life working in this area that I've seen an all female panel that wasn't there to talk about gender. And of course the fact that I was that shocked raises all kinds of issues. But my question is, clearly not all science is equal, and there are bubbles within different fields that allow women to be viewed as not just women. And I'm wondering what you think the elements are that lead to that happening.
Exact question, why or how did that happen?
Why and how? What is it about certain particular areas, and biotech maybe is just one example, that makes it possible to have an all-female panel that's not there to talk about gender, where women are, there just to be investors, just to be scientists, and not as tokens?
Yeah.
What are the features of these bubbles where women get a better shot?
Really, I don't know. Maybe you have more insight in that. I know that from my point of view, my work environment, which is medicine and surgery, it will take a long time before it will happen, I think, a very long time. We will have to wait a generation turnover to have such panels. Maybe in your environment it will be possible soon, but I don't know how.
In my environment, actually most of the panels I'm on, I tend to be the only female, typically. So it's kind of exciting to be an all-female. That's why I was so jazzed about it. I think it's things like this and us meeting each other and creating this support network. And I think we just have to start doing like what you said. I think it's an amazing model, and I really value that.
And organizations like Hello Tomorrow, not having these gender bias, so they can have a panel with just women, and that's normal to them. So it's good that we have this in Paris to be an example for other conferences everywhere.
Hi, my name's Caroline. I work for Shell, another energy company. I had a question, two questions actually. Firstly, you asked Michael, the other panelists, about how they felt when they were asked to do this. I was curious to know how you felt actually when you were asked to do this. And then my second question is along the lines of what Engie has done. Well, Shell does not have a female CEO, unfortunately. But we have done a lot of progressive things around, women's networks, mentoring programs, sponsorship, universal maternity leave policy around the world, all of these great things. But one of the things we're now finding, and we've even renamed our women's networks to be around balance, because actually we want to be more inclusive and get men in the conversation. But one of the things we're now finding is that men are feeling that things are unfair. We don't have quotas. However, that we are really working hard to try and get better gender balance. So I'm just curious to ask the panelists about how you believe we can try and broaden the conversation and to perhaps change some of get hearts and minds in terms of men really believing that gender balance is the right thing to do.
I'll start. Because I might reflect on the second one too. So I've never moderated a panel on women in science and entrepreneurship, and I must admit, even in the back and forth that we had, kind of on topics and questions, I was sort of framing things in like what I saw as the natural. It's like, let's discuss, programs for women mentoring. Let's discuss, programs. There's a lot of programs like in my home state where there's and I do think some of these things are really good mechanisms where it's a fun focus on female founders, or there'll be a women's networking group, or some of the things that you've referred to. And I think to some degree I was sort of naturally framing a lot of, let me ask the women on the panel this question about some women's effort, and actually we met beforehand and chatted, and even sort of reframing some of my questions about that were sort of broader. It was just like a broader discussion. These are for folks that happen to have some great insights as women. But yes, this is the first time I've done a panel like that. I do think, I'll make a quick comment and I'll turn it over on this involving men in the conversation. I can sort of, because I see in a place so in Cleveland, we really didn't have a lot going on around entrepreneurship. We didn't have a pipeline of entrepreneurs, let alone female entrepreneurs. And as we've put a lot of governmental support into these efforts and foundation support into these efforts, we've seen our pipeline build up. And it's just been critical to us to see that the pipeline builds with great female founders and great companies where females are playing a big role, because those are often companies that are successful. So, as a man that's working in an environment where we're really trying to ramp up our startup activity, I think it's critically important, and also as the father of 2 daughters, and actually as a son who's going to be living in this world, and sort of what that means for him as well. So I felt honored to be on the panel and was a little nervous about how it's all going to go.
I wanted to say something. We all, men and women, I think. When I started thinking about that before coming here, I've read some few things, because I thought, well, let's read a little bit. It's not because I'm a woman, but I'm an expert of the gender question, so I have to read a little bit about that. And I realized one thing that didn't really please me, in fact. I realized that, of course, I never behaved, with sexism with other women, but sometimes I did not really notice the sexism around me. And I was kind of, guilty of, not noticing. And I think we, women and men, we are guilty of not noticing gender stereotypes. We have been raised in a world led by men. So just the first thing we have, women and men, have to acknowledge that the fact that we have been raised in that context. That's the first thing, to be aware of our inner sexism, in fact. And the second thing, when I started to talk with some of my friends and men, not really sexist, very friendly with me, very proud of me, even with my boyfriend, in fact, I realized that sometimes it's difficult for some men to acknowledge that fact, to say, yes, sexism is real, it does exist. Sometimes it's difficult to just to put that. And they straight away they talk about quotas and how unfair it is and blah 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 and blah blah blah. Like they are in defense mode straight away when you raise the gender problem. So that's the first thing. We are all sexist, in fact, and let's talk, quietly about that. And yeah, I think that's the first step. But sometimes it's difficult to take the man into a quiet conversation in that.
But I'm very happy to see that there are so many men here in the audience today, so that's very good. So I think it's impossible to make a change without the support of men. So yeah, thank you for coming.
And just maybe one comment about your comment saying that sometimes men they don't perceive this all these initiatives are very positive, or they see it with some impacts for them or something like that. I have to tell you a story. Isabelle Cocher, our CEO, she proposed me the position of being a CEO of the business unit Renewables in September 2015, and I was pregnant. I was expected 2 babies, twins, so not very easy. And I was supposed to be nominated on 1st of January 2016, and I had my babies on 1st January 2016. So many men, it was my first job like that. Previously, I was working for ministers as political advisor. So, I've never run a business, and now it's a business of 1 billion euros. So, it was quite a challenge. And at the time, I had my twins. So many men said, I know why she get this position. She get this position because she's a woman and the CEO is a woman. So she's just reflecting the ambition of the CEO. And that was what was saying. And they were saying also that she will fail because she will have all this burden with the babies and all that, and she will not manage all that. And finally, it worked very well, and I'm very happy in my job. And so what make it work is that I had the confidence that I can make it. And I had the confidence because, you have to prove it. It's always very difficult, but you have to prove it. And I think that the best way to argue and to argue towards those arguments is to show that you are able to do it and to show that you can work. And for example, I made some big deals, and in the past, the group tried to make those deals. And the fact that it worked for me is the fact because I was a woman, and I had a different way to negotiate with people. And this way, it made it. So I would say that, yes, sometimes it's very difficult because men expect that you fail. And you have to be calm and to have confidence to overcome all that. And I think that my experience was very good because, I'm very proud that Isabelle proposed me this position, even though I had all these personal things going on at the same time.
Hi, my name is Ndubisi Arinze Eze. I am the CEO and founder of Aerial Industries in Africa, Nigeria specifically. I am so honored to be here and to see 4 very powerful women on stage. And I have to give props to Hello Tomorrow for making this happen. This is more or less the second time in my lifetime that I've been able to, have the pleasure of having something like this happen. And I can also feel a little bit that there's the tension in the room, because this is a very tough conversation to have in general. And I think you ladies are doing an incredible job. Now, my question is, in Africa, we have the same challenge, and you can imagine the magnitude on that end. The lady who's from Total mentioned that they have programs that are going on, and they're able to, from Shell, sorry, not Total, Shell, right? And you guys are doing incredible work. You have different programs that are supporting women. We need more of that. AI is coming. I think the world has to face the fact that we have bigger problems than, sexism and racism and all that. This is the time for humanity to come together, utilize the support and the intelligence and the power that every single person can bring into making our life and our world a much better place. So I just wanted to ask quickly, where can women in Africa get that empowerment and those kind of programs, get access to those kind of programs that she mentioned about? Anyone that you guys know of? Thank you.
I actually don't know many. I know there are some out there. I know there are some programs in Nigeria. Actually, I might have to follow up with you after. But there is a bunch of stuff with actually space apps when I was asked to go out there and speak to young women and startup entrepreneurs. And I know that there's a level, I think they're trying to do a bunch with the World Food Program right now, a lot of startup type things with women, and also with UN, I think the UNHCR, but I don't know which specific communities they're in. But I know a lot of the bigger agencies are trying to set that up for entrepreneurs. And there's also UN Women. And see, so I'm going to pass this so that everyone can shout out their answers.
I think Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has some programs for women in Africa because they focus on countries that really need their help, not developed countries. In surgery, in medical, half of the interns at the moment in the public system are foreign students. A lot of them come from Africa, North Africa, and South. Most of the students coming from North Africa, half of them are men and women. But from Nigeria or other countries of more southern countries in Africa, they are mostly men. In fact, I've never worked with a female doctor coming from that countries. From Algeria, Morocco, Egypt, yes, but not from southern countries. That's my experience. I don't know why.
Hi, my name's Charlotte. I'm the co-founder of a telecommunication company. And all of you speak a lot about confidence, and I think that that's the primary problem right now in women in engineering and women. I come from a mechanical engineering background, and I went to an all-girls high school. So I had a lot of confidence when I was younger. I was an athlete. I had a team full of women. And then I jumped from high school, an all-women's high school, to engineering. And I would look behind me, and there would be 3, 4 women in a classroom of 120. And then I personally had a lot of confidence, but I had no confidence in this. There was no social security for me. I couldn't ask a question without feeling like someone was looking at me, what are you doing here? I would sit down in class, and people would say, oh, you're in the wrong class, you know? And the amount of times I've hit the glass ceiling since I went into engineering and started a company. This is my second company. The first company was in medtech, so I can relate to a lot of you, engineering, research, medical technology, and entrepreneurship. And the amount of times that I hit that glass ceiling and went back down and somehow found this confidence to get back up and get back up. And now I have an incredible Iranian woman co-founder, and we're loving this. And you know, it's not often that you have 2 women that are starting a company in telecommunications. And it's really difficult. So I'd like to know, you guys, like, how do you bounce back from the glass ceiling? How do you calibrate your confidence? Like, how do you get out of that funk and go there and get up every morning and continue even after sexual harassment, like time after time again, you know, whether it's sexism, whether it's a mild form, whether it's stronger? How do you guys do it?
I do it because every other younger girl needs to. So for me, it's like, if I can't do it, how can they do it? So it actually motivates me. Personally, that's what drives me when it goes wrong. And then I reach out to my girlfriends, which is also great because now I have female friends, which is another story we won't get into. But yeah, I think it's really reaching out and asking for support. And I think it's also important when we work with young girls. I work with young girls in like building robots and stuff. I think it's important we work with them that they also learn to support each other, and that's kind of, and so that we carry that through our lives. And I think that that's a lesson that needs to be taught when we're young. I certainly didn't have that when I was younger. I had no females to look up to. I was told to get out of the wood shop, and I showed them now. But I think that's also part of what kind of drives some of us women to be entrepreneurs, right? Like, shoot, it's not working. All right, I'm gonna do it my way. And I think that's what drives a lot of entrepreneurs. And I just think it's something interesting to look at.
Yeah, and I think if I'm mentoring young girls and telling them to be strong, then I need to be strong. So that's what drives me. But I also think that we as women can support each other, and we can look to each other for support, and we should do that a lot more than what we do.
It's also important that we remember we can also look to men. Yeah. I just want to say this, like, I am so excited there's men in this room. And by the way, all my mentors are men. My female mentors are my peer mentors. So I'm just excited that more and more men are stepping up to this, and that we create a safe, I think it's important as women that we create a safe space for men to actually ask these questions, because it's kind of awkward. So what really happened? You know, I mean, those are things that you don't want to say in a weird way. So I think it's important that we as women also invite the men in a safe way into this dialogue. So I'm really appreciative of this panel for that reason.
And in public situations, I always try to support other women. So that's something that we can try to do more.
Yeah, thank you for that question, really, because it's a struggle every day, really. But the thing is that my experience is quite the opposite of yours, because I really come from a very man world, and I kind of got out of that world meeting, engineers, geeks, and things, and I found them far much less sexist. That's my usual folks. And I'm here because of Bertie here, who invited me. And I think him and all his friends, they are far much less sexist.
We need more of you, Bertie. We love you. We need 1,000 million of you.
You understood me. So I've got the reverse experience, because I think it's even worse in the medical world, in fact. I found engineer world, better from that point of view. So.
For my part, I would say that the experience helps me quite a lot, and that enabled me to have a kind of virtual protection. So every day I move forward with this virtual protection, so that means that I feel safe, I would say. And why is that? Is in the past I was 25 years old or something like that. I was the advisor of the number 2 ministers in France. And so I had to advise him on many subjects related to energy and climate change, on worldwide negotiations. So not very easy when you are 25. And you have to give advice for political discussion and for political decisions. So that's not very easy. And the fact that finally I made it, I mean, in my mentor, I have a key word, which is to say, everything is possible. And when I get up, I just believe that everything is possible. When I am in front of a very tough negotiation, everything is possible. You just have to make it. And so for me, this is really key, to get up every day and think that everything is reachable, and it's only a matter of willingness.
Hello. Sorry.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Hamza. I work in social impact. These days I'm working in Pakistan with an education fund. Our focus is on education innovations and scaling them across Pakistan. This isn't the first time I've been in a panel of this sort with all women. So first off, salute to all of you. It's really incredible to hear your stories. I've had the privilege of working in Canada and in Pakistan, and everywhere I've been to similar discussions, I've heard the same thing. But here's my story that I wanted to share. My first professional mentor was a woman, and I had the privilege of learning so much from her and getting the sense of direction that I have currently in my life. So my question to each of the panelists is this, and I've asked this every time I've been to such a panel. What is the one thing that I can do and we as a society can do that A, would help increase women in entrepreneurship and science 1 year from now, 3 years from now, and 10 years from now? I'd like your take on that. Thank you.
It just came to me. That's a new one that I'm working on. Every time you see a little girl, tell her how smart she is instead of how pretty she is. That's one thing we can all start doing.
And increased awareness of our own, gender biases and support each other.
Yeah. My answer would be improving networking, female networking. This is really, to be successful, we need each other, really. So, and we are really not good at that, women, to be, to support each other. We have to, we have to work on that. Solidarity and, So networking would be my first thing to do in the coming years, yeah.
And I would say stop with all the cliché that we can see on television and on movies where women are just cooking or just taking care of the kids. I think it is also a matter of image of the society. And that would be very useful to show people and show women in a very business, scientific and things like that métier. I think that it would be a good way to change the mentality of people.
I'm an evolutionary biologist, also help run a research department in a Center for Research and Interdisciplinarity here in Paris. It's a mouthful. So thank you. First, it's great to listen and great to learn from you. 2 weeks ago, I think there was a study that got a lot of headlines that said female surgeons perform better than male surgeons. And so this got shared all over. And my first reaction was great. So this is fighting a stereotype. It's a male-dominated profession. And then you sort of think about it and go, well, does it mean we have to make a study like this for every field? Or is this the right way to fight those stereotypes? And what if we get an answer we don't like, if you will? What if we find a profession where we say, oh, no, it's actually men? What is your reaction when you see these studies? What is your thought on doing these studies?
I read the study, and last year I think they did the same study about doctors, not surgeons, but doctors, and they found that there was a significant statistical difference in outcome in patients managed by women compared to men. The thing is that some of my female surgeons friends share it on Facebook. This post, they posted it on Facebook, several of them, and we laughed about it. Like, yes, it's been ages we're telling that. Well, it's kind of superficial thing to congratulate us between us that yes, we are the best. Why not? Men do it, so we can do it. We can do it also. Be a bit silly sometimes. But the thing is that when it's very difficult to build real scientifically valid studies like that, there can be so many bias, I think. So I think the good thing about that sort of articles is not the results, but just the thing they are made and, make us laugh a little bit. And, it's not, I don't really think it's true. Sorry for my friends, girlfriends, female friends. But I think it's good there are articles like that. I'm still ambiguous about that.
We have time for one more question.
Well, one comment. I'm Berthier Huet. I'm the general manager for textiles in Paris. I'm the proud friend of two of the awesome women you have here. In Paris, there are a couple of initiatives led by Start-Her or Paris Pionnière, and everybody in the room that don't know these organizations should connect with them. Also, I stand up against my own bias with women, with people from different ethnic grounds. And anybody that feels like me, you should stand up too, not only being in this room, but in your everyday life. And thank you very much. Hello Tomorrow for bringing this to stage today.
That was great. Well, what a great way to end it. And Nadine, did you have final?
Yeah, I just wanted to say a few words from the organization point of view. So it's the first time that we have a panel like this. And first of all, I want to thank all of the participants and the moderator, of course. You guys, you did a great job to have such an open and honest conversation. And I hope that we can have many of those in the future, maybe already at the cocktail later. So thank you all for that. Give them a big, big, big applause. Because I think it's a very complex thing that we're trying to address here. We cannot solve all the problems that were discussed today, but what's maybe interesting for you to know is that within Hello Tomorrow, we never really emphasized this issue so much, and still we had a very balanced, gender-balanced challenge in terms of women and men participating. And we don't know really why. Maybe it's because our team is very balanced in terms of nationalities, in terms of men and women working together to bring science innovation everywhere in the world. And actually, we never think really so hard about whether we should involve men or women. We just try to make it as the norm to include everybody. And so I'm also very happy that you accepted that norm, being so 50-50 here in this room, I think, and in our summit, and with actually what we see in almost all of our events, even in places around the world where we don't normally see women going to entrepreneurship events. So I don't know what it is we're doing, but even without really, putting a panel about women in science or something women in the title, we try to create this atmosphere where everyone can prosper. So I hope we can continue to do that. And if we are a platform to improve the conversation on this topic, I think that's wonderful. And I hope we can continue like that. So that's just a few things that I want to say. For me, it was also very enlightening to hear all of your thoughts, because as women, how often do we have this type of discussion like this, in this way? Not so often, so I hope we can really make this more frequent. And with that, I want to close this session and invite all of you to go to the main stage, because we have a big celebration happening at 6 o'clock. There will be the award ceremony, and I'm sure you're all very excited to hear who are the finalists of the Hello Tomorrow Challenge. So I hope to see you there. Thank you so much for your participation and questions. And I'm looking forward to have a big party also at the end of this conference. But first we'll have the award ceremony at 6. I hope you don't miss it. Thank you very much.